Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I am Mike.
And I am Amy, and welcome to Let's Talk.
We are super excited to
Super
share with
excited.
you tonight. Um, what an amazing topic, I think. Let's get the skinny on
I
fat,
know,
right?
actually one of
You
my
know,
favorite.
well, and when I say fat, most people just have an immediate negative connotation,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
Like if I said something about fat being good, what would you think about that?
I would be kind of confused.
Yeah. And
We can
so
get some clarification tonight, right?
yeah, what is fat? What role does it play in the body? So, my name is Dr. Mike Mills, and Amy and I started our health journey over 7 years ago now.
Yes.
And we did our initial metabolic reset and actually felt what happened whenever our body had what we call a metabolic flip. And our body truly went into fat burn. We started tapping into this amazing energy source and how it made us feel, how it affected our energy, and really it was a life-changing experience.
Absolutely. And it happened fast. And
Yeah.
so this is my one of my favorite topics because fat and metabolism and muscle matters and all of those fun things
Mhm.
kind of tied into our journey in the beginning,
Yeah.
and not realizing how important targeting your like fat, let's say visceral fat.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about subcutaneous fat, but visceral fat can change the game for you.
Yeah, it does. And Amy and I were those people that maybe some of you can relate to this. We were like exercising a lot, thinking that if we
Yeah.
just ate clean, um, and ate, healthy things, that somehow our metabolism would come back online. And, what we found is that that wasn't happening, that we actually needed a targeted reset. We needed something that could really change the signaling in our body
Mhm.
and allow our body to flip over and know how to use fat as energy. But fat isn't necessarily always a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Too little fat in your body can create a lot of disruption in your body. And too much fat in your body can create a lot of disruption. Now, commonly in our culture, we really don't have a challenge associated with people having too little fat, but it can happen, right, in situations. So, what we want to people to really get out of this tonight. So if you're here and today is your day one, right?
Like,
It's
wow,
Monday and you're like, this is my
so
first day,
excited.
and you're plugging into this. This has everything to do with what you're going to experience over the next week. If you've been here for a long time, I think this is going to anchor in why what we're doing is so important and how this can be transformational in your health. So I
Yes.
know that you had some questions about fat,
Yeah,
and
I did. If Chris, if you could switch the slide for me, that would be super great. So, what is fat? Fat is not just extra weight,
yeah,
right? We were talking about that. It's so tell me, what is fat,
yeah.
Dr. Mills, as I talked to you last
So,
week.
fat is stored energy, right? That's why we have it, right? Because, Dr. A talks about this in the Life book that our
Yeah.
physiology was designed, our genetic makeup essentially is from thousands of years of our body living in a state where starvation was more of a concern than
Hmm.
abundance of calories. And so it became a way for us to store energy so that we have energy in seasons when we needed it, right? It is a hormone regulation organ. I think that is when I say
Yeah.
fat is an organ and it's part of our hormone regulation system, part of our endocrine system. I think that's kind of a new idea to a lot of people. And
Yes.
it's a protective mechanism, right? It's protective to your organs, it's protective to your body, it's insulation to your body. And so those are all very important things. So, key points from this is that fat is your body's backup fuel, right? Your body doesn't store fat by accident, it stores fat on purpose. And when your metabolism is working, you store and burn fat efficiently. But when it is not, you store more and you burn less, right? And I think a lot of us are here because we were stuck in a state where we were storing more and burning less. So, Chris, you can go ahead and take us to the next slide.
Yeah, more into not just weight loss, right? We're talking about fat loss, which is a huge part of our system. And why do we have fat in
And
the
the
beginning?
and the role it plays in being metabolically
Yes,
healthy,
metabolic.
right? How does fat play a
Hmm.
role in us being metabolically healthy? So again, we talked about this. It's stored energy in your body, right? Which we need that.
Hmm.
It's protective, right? There are layers of fat that are protective in and around your organs and on our body, right? And it's hormone regulating. So for example, the fat can release a hormone called leptin to let you know that you're full.
Hmm.
In postmenopausal women, that fat becomes the primary estrogen producing organ, right? And it is something that we use to make hormones in our body. So, in a stressful situation, right, our body can use fat and mobilize fat to create hormones. So, fat is not our enemy, dysfunction is, right? So, we talk a lot about metabolic dysfunction, right? And if our body is functioning well, we're using fat appropriately, storing it when we need to, using it as a resource when we can. So, when you think about this and
Hmm.
the relationship with fat, um, when we were getting ready to go on to our metabolic reset,
Yeah.
how did you view fat then compared to you view fat now?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, when we started, what I did not know then, what I do know now, is my waist circumference
Hmm.
was extremely high for a woman. And at that time, I did not know that. And so that was my metabolic dysfunction was causing me to not have energy, was causing me not to sleep well or oversleep throughout the day, causing me to have sugar cravings and more so caffeine cravings, I guess. I needed something to pick me up throughout the day. And I think that was the difference that I didn't realize the visceral fat was
Yeah.
in that area.
So, would you say that you viewed fat as kind of a cosmetic issue to a large degree,
Oh, yeah.
but you didn't think that fat was actually playing a role in why you didn't have energy,
Yes.
why you maybe had brain fog, why you were
Hmm.
tired, and thinking that why am I working out with a trainer twice a week? Why am I running 20, 25 miles a week?
Yes.
Why am I eating in these certain windows of the day, but yet my body is stuck and I can't seem to mobilize this fat and turn it into a fuel for my body to use?
Yeah, and I didn't realize I just needed more willpower. If I just had more willpower, maybe that would go away. Maybe I just would run a little more, exercise a little more, and not eat as much, and actually not realizing how important the whole system is when you're trying to get rid of fat and what was happening.
Did you start to think that maybe your body was even broken or like
Yeah,
something was wrong?
yes, I
Right?
did.
You know, a lot of times we can end up in that situation, like something must be wrong. Like
Well, I
there
think
must be an issue with
it
my
is,
thyroid or
yeah,
with,
or I'm aging. This is just how it's supposed to feel
yeah, is
at
this
this
the way it's
age.
going to be?
Yeah.
But there's multiple kinds of fat. There's different types of fat. And so we're going to talk about
Mhm.
a couple different types of fat. So one is subcutaneous fat. And subcutaneous fat is that fat under your skin that you can actually pinch, right? It's right there. And subcutaneous fat, it isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? That having some subcutaneous fat is very healthy as
It's
insulation,
like the
right?
ones you can pinch on
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And
It's less harmful metabolically. It's
right.
not really creating the metabolic dysfunction in people that they're um, experiencing.
Yes.
And from an appearance standpoint, that's the kind of the fat that we see, right? That we think about. So when you started your metabolic reset, did you even realize that there was different types of fat in your body and that
No.
some types were more dangerous than another?
No. I had no idea.
And which type did you care about? The part that people could see and you could pinch, or
Hmm.
maybe the part that was inside of you? Which one was more
Oh,
concerning?
definitely the part that people could see and I could touch and feel as
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
happening.
I think a lot of people can relate to that,
Hmm.
right? We think about the part that we can see and we think about that from an appearance standpoint. But here's what we're sharing and why we're talking about metabolic health so much.
Yes.
Because when our metabolic health is offline, when we are experiencing some level of metabolic dysfunction, fat storage is happening inappropriately, and that is upstream. So, really, the weight or the fat that we see isn't it, um, it's a downstream effect. It's a symptom of metabolic
Metabolic
dysfunction,
dysfunction.
right?
Hmm.
So when we're talking about why we want to offer you a targeted reset, it's so that we can move upstream, right? In our culture, everybody's just talking about how do I lose weight? But
Yes.
we talk about,
Quality weight loss.
yeah, so what's the difference? What's the difference between quality weight loss and weight loss?
Because it really does matter what you're losing. When that scale starts changing and metabolically, right, it does matter about what you're actually losing. Are you losing fat? Or are you losing subcutaneous fat, visceral fat, or are you losing muscle?
Yeah, and how would we know that?
Well, now I love the smart scale. I know
Yeah.
that from the smart scale. I know from measuring. I knew before over 7 years ago is when I did measure, I lost a lot of that around my stomach
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. And when you're
And
measuring your waist circumference, right, we're measuring both subcutaneous fat
yes,
and likely the effects of
yeah.
visceral
But
fat,
the
right?
scale is a game changer. The
So
metabolic scale is a game
if
changer.
if if you're saying, well, what's this scale, right?
Hmm.
It's a body composition scale. And what it gives you the ability to do is not just see your weight, but actually see the composition. That's why it's called a body composition scale. And we call it a metabolic scale a lot of times in language,
Yeah.
because it allows you to see the
Smart
makeup of
scale.
your body, right?
Yeah.
How much muscle, how much fat, how much subcutaneous fat, what is your visceral fat score, right? Those are things that are all extremely important for us to be able to really understand what we're doing. So I want to get into something that I think is very powerful and very important. If you could just go back one slide for me, Chris, I'm going to actually tap into that slide for just a second more. But um, is talk about visceral fat. But
Oh, I
a
like
lot of
this.
times we
Yeah.
don't realize what that is. So if you can, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm showing a little picture here of a cross section where it shows subcutaneous fat is that fat between the layer of muscle essentially and your skin, and that visceral
Hmm.
fat is the fat in and around your organs. So it's stored around your vital organs. It's highly active metabolically, right? And it's hidden. You know, you could actually have increased visceral fat and have a normal waist circumference. It's
Hmm.
possible for that to happen. But when we talk about fat, we say the word fat cells, right? So what does that mean by it's a cell? It means it's a living, breathing thing. And what I've found in being in a lot of conversations with people is they didn't realize, they
Right.
looked at fat like something that they cut off the side of a steak.
Yeah.
And it was like this inert substance that really wasn't alive. It wasn't producing anything. It was just um, unattractive and taking up space, and it added weight to our body. But it's more than that, right? It is a fat cell, meaning it's a living, breathing cell which has to have a blood supply, and it needs to be able to function. It has organelles in it. It's a living, breathing thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's having a huge impact on the health of our country and our nation. So, as we're going through this, if you have any questions, right, if you're thinking, well, I have this question about visceral fat or subcutaneous fat, feel free to drop those in the chat and we can address those. But visceral fat is around your organs. It's stored around your vital organs, right? So as there's more of it, it can literally, it's occupying space, so it's choking things off. It's highly active metabolically and it's hidden. So we're going to go to the next slide now. And this next slide is going to show you a video. And I think this is a very, very
Very.
powerful video that
Hmm.
brings some things to life that are sometimes hard to understand or describe. So I'm excited for you to see this.
The fat accumulated inside your body does not sit idly or stay in one place. Instead, it spreads silently, seeping deep into the abdomen and wrapping itself around organs like a slow tightening net. It engulfs the liver first, coating it until the tissue stiffens and struggles to process toxins. Then it slides toward the pancreas, surrounding it so completely that its signals for insulin weaken and blood sugar begins to rise. as if the body is losing contact with itself. From there, the fat presses into the kidneys, squeezing the delicate filters that clean the blood. Pressure builds, tiny vessels narrow, and the kidneys work harder with every passing hour. The heart feels the strain next. Visceral fat releases chemicals that thicken blood, raise tension in the arteries, and force the heart to pump with more power than before, wearing it down beat by beat. Even the lungs are not safe. Fat in the abdomen pushes upward, limiting how deeply the lungs can expand, making each breath slightly shallower than the last. And through chemical signals, this fat reaches the brain too, disturbing hunger cues, fogging clarity, and altering mood. It all happens quietly, invisibly, reshaping the body long before you ever notice a single sign.
So, when I saw that video for the first time, I was like, man, this video just says a lot in a short period of time. And the description going along with what we could actually see happen in that video was so powerful. But, how many of you here realized that this visceral fat that accumulates in your abdomen and around your organ was literally an inflammation creating tissue that was causing inflammation throughout your body, in your vessels, in your joints, in your muscles, that inflammation was leading to brain fog, lack of energy, chronic pain, right? And as that visceral fat builds up in our abdomen, it's occupying space, putting pressure up on our diaphragm, affecting our breathing, affecting our lungs, literally affecting all the things of our body. So when we're talking and we're looking at these markers and these indicators, it's not simply because summer's coming and we want you to look better in a bathing suit. It's because this is the primary upstream cause of chronic disease and needless suffering, right? So there was some questions in the chat about body composition scales.
First, I have to say, like Yanni said, I'm more determined after that video. And you
Okay,
know what?
good.
When we learned all this about a few months ago with our company and the science that backs this up of really what the reset is doing, we were more determined to share it
Yeah.
with more people too.
And what
Crazy.
and that's honestly, I really appreciate you sharing that because that's part of my driving force for tonight. That we can really move this conversation beyond, appearance and just difficulty moving around, right? Which those are extremely important things. I'm not putting less value on those things, but I think there's a part of this that's missed that people don't realize actually what's happening in their body. And maybe right now you're not just thinking about yourself, maybe you're thinking about your husband or your wife or your children or your aunts or your uncles, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, all these things that they're having is probably due to that visceral fat in and
Yes.
around their abdomen.
Yeah.
That belly is not just something that gets in the way, that interferes with your grandchild sitting on your lap. It's not just making you short of breath because you're bending over to touch your toes. It's because this visceral fat is inside your body, strangulating your organs and disrupting your endocrine system, creating inflammatory cytokines, right? Pain, discomfort, and all the things. So if we
Yeah.
go back to that slide again, Chris, and look at that.
And they're saying Lon is saying it's making me want to stay on plan.
That's right.
And that is the reason why, like, we just really love sharing the metabolic inflammation, your metabolism, your hormones, like all of these things are happening because of that.
And that's where we can use science to drive this, right? And this whole program is rooted in science. The science says you're going to lose 10 times more weight and 17 times more fat if you work with an Optavia coach, right? The science shows that we can create targeted fat burn, meaning we can reduce your visceral fat by 14% in 16 weeks. And while we're doing that, we're preserving your lean mass, your muscle. So visceral fat, right? It's different, right? And the reason it's different is because it's surrounding your organs. It's releasing inflammatory signals. It's disrupting your hormones, right?
Yes.
A lot of, women don't realize this, but, sometimes they'll think about certain foods or whatever they should eat, or they're concerned about certain things, but yet they have visceral fat, men in the same, inside their body, creating chemical toxicity essentially within their body, right? And just like you can get insulin resistance to drive your blood sugar higher, you can get leptin resistance, which then doesn't give you that I'm full feeling, right? So this visceral fat is driving metabolic dysfunction, right?
Hmm.
It's strongly linked to insulin resistance, fatigue, cravings, weight regain, chronic disease risk. Visceral fat is not a storage problem, it's a signaling problem. It's accumulating because our metabolic system has been disrupted because of our lifestyle, because we're not proficient in the 6 areas or macro habits of health, right? If we're lacking sleep, it disrupts our metabolic system. If we're not getting proper nutrition, spaced effectively throughout the day, balancing proteins and carbs, keeping our insulin low so we can burn fat, all of which our program does for you, right? Managing stress and reducing cortisol, getting effective sleep, being in a healthy environment and surroundings. All 6 macro habits play a critical role in optimizing metabolic health.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading, I love these like questions in the chat. They're talking about, does it lead to fatty liver? If it,
Yeah, so let's
diagnosis of fatty liver are not the same thing. And so, and they're just, this is important to learn about. And can you share the link for the video, which I
yeah.
think they're going to put it in.
So can we talk about that a little bit? One of the reasons why this visceral fat is so dangerous is because of its proximity to the portal vein, which is, so this fat is in and around your pancreas, right, and your
Mhm.
liver, right? And so yes, with this accumulation, right, whenever we have this excess accumulation of visceral fat, it starts essentially overflowing, right, and filling
Mhm.
up your liver with fat, right? And
So it's
then
growing.
that's where subcutaneous, the one you can pinch, starts to become a problem because, once our abdomen and our viscera is essentially full of fat, this overflow has to go somewhere and the body's just looking for places to store it, right? And fat is also a place where our body stores toxins, right? So if we're taking in a lot of toxicity, the body is creating these. So why a targeted metabolic reset matters is because most people are trying to eat less, exercise more, and trying to use willpower, and they fail not because they're weak, but because their metabolism is working against them. But when we have a proper reset, like our initial metabolic reset, it stabilizes blood sugar, it reduces insulin spikes, and lowers insulin levels, right? And when that happens, it's important because when insulin is high, we can't burn fat. So we need insulin to come down. It lowers inflammation, right? That's why people just start feeling less pain and more energy and less brain fog. And it signals the body to release fat, especially the visceral fat, right?
Yes.
And so when you fix the signal, the body responds appropriately. Um, I did want to address some numbers that they were asking about the body composition scale in there.
Yeah. The
So
visceral.
most of your scales will have
Mhm.
a 1 to 20 scale for visceral fat, right?
Yeah.
It's very critical that you get that below 10. I would say optimally, like if you're saying, no, I want to be optimally well, that visceral fat number between a 4 and 6 is very powerful, right? When you're looking at body fat percentages, what is appropriate? For a woman, when you're looking at your scale, it says body fat percentage. You're looking for that to be between 18 and 28, right? And for a man, between 10 and 20, right? So you want to get that visceral fat number below 10. Women want to have their body fat percentage below 28. Men want to have it below 20, right? So those are very, very important indicators that we want to achieve.
Yeah, that is very true. They asked on here, is visceral fat the same as cholesterol?
Right? No, visceral fat they can be made up. There can be cholesterol as part of that, right? But no, cholesterol is not essentially the same thing as visceral fat. Remember, cholesterol, in our society, we like to call it good or bad, right? But there's only appropriate and appropriate cholesterol based on the state of physiology that your body is in. Remember that, all of our hormones are made up of fats and primarily cholesterol, right? And so, again, it's a signaling issue and it's a function issue within the body. So, for example, if you're under chronic stress, right? Your cholesterol levels are going to rise because that cholesterol is being used to create what? Stress hormones, right? So, again, we need to change the signaling in the body and we need to reset the metabolic health. And that is what we do with our initial targeted reset. Then we carry that into the refining process where we're optimizing your nutrition and lifestyle for effective body composition and metabolic health. And then renewing is a constant phase of improving and enhancing our life throughout the different seasons of our life.
Yeah. And I feel like, that's why it's great to have a coach to guide you to what correct program you should be on as you're doing those things. To know like where should I be on the reset or should I be on something else as I'm moving into the science of our program, right? Because we want to target those areas. That's why I said like quality weight loss matters because it does matter. Are we losing the visceral fat and are we losing that body fat?
So I would love it if some people went into the chat and maybe shared some things that connected with them tonight, right?
Yes.
What did you learn about fat, right? So fat plays positive roles in your body, right? But excess fat plays a negative role in your body. There's different types of fat. There's subcutaneous fat, right? That has value and is important. There's visceral fat that some, levels of visceral fat can be protective of your organs, but at higher levels, it can be very detrimental. So yes, that fat is a living thing. That's a powerful takeaway.
Yeah. Does the GLP-1 address the visceral fat?
No, there's nothing in a GLP-1 medication that causes fat loss or weight loss. Okay. What a GLP-1 medication does is it reduces your desire to eat, essentially neurologically, and it slows gastric mobility so you don't want to eat as much. So the only reason that someone would lose weight on a GLP-1 drug is because they're eating less, not because there's something in the medication that's actually causing weight loss. The problem with that is we're just eating less of the wrong things in the wrong structure, with the wrong timing, with the wrong makeup. Then guess what? We're probably losing more muscle than we are fat, right? And so that is a big concern. So why is preserving muscle so important? Because muscle equals metabolism, right? When when we lose muscle, our metabolism slows, fat regain becomes easier, energy drops, right? So the key here, the goal is not weight loss, it's fat loss while protecting muscle.
Yeah.
Your advantage is our structured approach helps preserve 98% of lean mass and protect muscle. So think of muscle as the glucose sponge. The more of it you have, the more your body can process carbohydrates effectively and use that as an energy source.
Yeah.
So
there are so many great questions in here, and I think we're going to have to come back and talk about this topic again because it
Great.
really is amazing. And as I was thinking about this, and you guys were all watching that video, we'll be able to share that with you in put it into the community page that you can watch it again. And there's the Facebook page right there. I was thinking about this because, right now, this is about metabolic dysfunction and quality weight loss as you're doing it. And I know you guys were putting wow when you saw that video. And there is a movement happening right now. And if you are a new client, thinking about becoming a client, you guys have an option in your amazing app that has a link that you can now share with your friends and family that allows them to come in and have a conversation of like, I don't know, do I have visceral fat? Is the reset good for me? And you can share that link with your family and friends that will allow them to have a conversation with your coach to see what program would best fit them.
And so hopefully you were sitting here tonight and you were not only laser focused in and going, oh my, I am so thankful that I am doing this right now and I am targeting my visceral fat and
Yes.
changing the physiology of my body and changing my life. But you were sitting there thinking about friends and family members and those closest to you that you love
That's
and you
right.
care about. And my question to you is, who who do you want to not look back and regret not saying anything?
That's right.
Okay. I don't want anybody to leave here and look back and say, I knew this and I never
I
said
shared it.
anything.
That's
There's
right.
no reason for regrets, right?
Yeah.
And so use that link, right? When you refer someone to your coach through that link and they say yes to joining us on this journey and to optimizing their health, you receive a $50 credit on your account and you can use as many of those as you want. And so now is just an amazing time to refer people. So
Yeah.
I know we're out of time. We got to
I
tie a
know.
bow on this, but next week we have an amazing let's talk about summer
Summer
structure,
structure.
right? We all could use some summer structure, right? And so remember, this is on YouTube, this is on Spotify. All of those resources. Come back every week, bring a friend, right? Optimizing your health is the thing that can truly transform your future. So thanks for joining
Yeah.
us tonight.
All right. See you soon.